Last week, we spoke about the widespread lie that the Palestinian Arabs, also known as Rashida Tlaib's ancestors, warmly welcomed Jews into their country after the Holocaust. By their country, I of course mean British territory conquered from the Turks, and by warmly, I of course mean with torches and pitchforks. Hey, we made a whole video about this last week, and it's a doozy. Today, I'll do you one better. I'm gonna prove that it wasn't the Palestinians who welcomed the Zionists, but the opposite. Yes, that's right. Most of the so-called Palestinians have arrived in the region after and because of Zionism. Listen closely, because that's not something they teach you in schools these days. Not that they teach you anything in schools these days. But first of all, a little piece of trivia. Did you know that following the Austro-Hungarian occupation of Bosnia, many Bosniaks, fearful of living under Christian rule, emigrated to Palestine, where most adopted the surname Bošnjak. To this day, Bošnjak is a very common surname among Palestinians of Bosnian origin. That's one of the reasons why so many Palestinians look like this. Wait, you thought all Arabs were brown and Jews were white? Oh boy, you're in for a surprise. Anyway, why is this story important? Because there's a false narrative that's sadly accepted even by many robots that the Palestinians are an indigenous brown people, while the Jews are white settlers who came from Europe and displaced them. You know, like these. Now, it's true that there were Arabs living in the region before Zionism. They stole it fair and square from the Romans in 637 of the Common Era. However, by the 19th century, they were somewhat hard to find. For example, in 1867, Mark Twain visited the Holy Land, sorry, it wasn't called Palestine at the time, and described what he found as a desolate country whose soil is rich enough but is given over wholly to weeds. We never saw a human being on the whole route, hardly a tree or shrub anywhere. And he was lucky for not seeing any human beings, since many of them were in the lucrative business of caravan raiding. Most famously, they robbed and murdered 20,000 Hajjis returning from Mecca in 1757. Lovely people. So before the 19th century, there were a couple 100,000 Bedouin roaming the land, robbing travelers and fighting the Turks and each other. These Bedouins brought African slaves, mostly from Sudan. This is why many of them look like these. Starting from 1830, the region accommodated numerous waves of Algerian emigration fleeing the French conquest of Algeria. At the same time, many Egyptians arrived in the region, fleeing conscription and forced labor in their homeland. Sadly, this didn't help them, as in 1831, their homeland arrived to them. Muhammad Ali Pasha, the Albanian dude who created modern Egypt, conquered the region and brought more Egyptians as laborers. In 1841, the Turks kicked his white ass back to Egypt. During the war, many soldiers deserted his defeated army and settled in the region. In 1860, thousands of Arabs moved in from what is now called Jordan and settled near modern Tiberias. They probably had a good reason for this, but I can't be asked to Google it. In 1864, thousands of Bosnians fled the Austro-Hungarian conquest of their country and settled in the region as well. Damn white settlers! Wow, Egyptians, Bosnians, Jordanians, Turks, Africans. Even Netflix isn't that diverse. Now we come to 1881. Zionism becomes a thing and Jews start coming from all over the world and building stuff and creating jobs. Yes, all over the world. What, you thought Zionism was just a European thing? Thousands of Arabs immigrated to the region to benefit from the job opportunities created by the new Jewish settlement. For example, the Jewish settlement of Rishon LeZion was founded in 1882 on land purchased from a local guy named Mustafa Abdallah Ali Dajan. By 1889, the 40 Jewish families that settled there had attracted more than 400 Arab families who enjoyed the job opportunities created by the prosperous settlement. Similar events occurred all over the region. Zionists created jobs which attracted people from all over the Arab world, making most of them foreign settlers. Horrifying. To this date, many Palestinians have last names that show their place of origin. For example, Al-Masri is the Egyptian. Al-Shami is the Syrian. Al-Lubani is the Lebanese. Al-Yamani is the Yemenite. In 1937, the Peel Commission reported, the Arab population shows a remarkable increase, partly due to the import of Jewish capital into Palestine and other factors associated with the growth of the Jewish national home. Okay, now let's go back for a moment and look at estimated, very estimated, population figures. Before the 1831 Egyptian invasion, there were less than 200,000 Muslims living in the region. On the eve of the first Aliyah in 1881, the Muslim population was already over 400,000. Today, in 2022, the Palestinians claim to number 14 million, totally natural population growth for rabbits, a bit sus for humans. Finally, let's take a look at a British report from 1920. There are now in the whole of Palestine hardly 700,000 people, much less than that of the province of Galilee alone in the time of Christ. Thanks, Romans! A small proportion of these are Bedouin Arabs. The remainder, although they speak Arabic and are termed Arabs, are largely of mixed race. Mixed race. As in a lot of immigrants from Europe, Asia and Africa who didn't have time to fully assimilate. Immigrants who benefited from the Jews' industry and capital then decided to get rid of them, just like their best friend in Europe. Boy, did that plan backfire? If the Zionists kept the land the shithole it was before they came, there wouldn't be 14 million Palestinians. There wouldn't even be a few 100,000 Palestinians. There wouldn't be any Palestinians, because there would be no need to invent them. My batteries are getting low again. Next week we'll talk about when and how the Palestinian people were invented. Spoiler, they were already making Godzilla movies in color back then. Dinosaur out, yo!